Think about this. Christian Franklin makes that catch yesterday and then just kind of jogs in with his head down. He knew he made a great play, but he acted like he'd been there before. Could you have imagined if any of the Ole Miss outfielders would have made a catch like that, which, by the way, any one of them probably could. That's a really good team. Could you imagine the reaction that
the game would have stopped.
Of them would have had? That's right. They would have taken bows. They would have taken beer showers from their beloved student section. They might have done a striptease on the field for all I know, because, honestly, that's kind of what I expect out of them. Connor O'Gara joining us from Saturday Down South. Connor, I was just in Oxford for the Arkansas Ole Miss baseball series. There is no more annoying baseball team in the country, I think, than Ole Miss, with the antics and some of the stuff that goes on. I don't know if you watched any of it or if you know some of the stuff Ole Miss does. What do you think is the most annoying football team in the SEC? And I'm not talking about the fans, and I'm not talking because they win. Just the way the team acts on the field. Or is there even one of those teams right now that you could point out?
I was going to say, the Ole Miss baseball uniforms, if I got to dress like that, I think I'd be a little bit annoying. So I kind of get it. The bravado that would come with looking that good on a consistent basis, knowing that that's the type of uniform you get to wear. So I'm just saying, not to excuse any of that, but I don't know that there's an SEC team that kind of embraces that bad boy type of, hateable
pretty boy. It's not bad
mantra.
Boy, it's pretty boy. It's pretty boy. There's a
okay,
difference
pretty
here.
Boy, yeah. I don't necessarily think that there is one, because if there's a fan base that I think is most annoying, Tennessee fans are certainly up there, though they're obviously passionate. But just in terms of actual teams, teams that think that they're kind of above everything, I'm not crazy about the way some of the things that I've seen play out at Auburn over the last couple of years, and some of the things that you see, the way that the receivers talk and the way that Bo Nix has kind of come across at times. You're just kind of all right, win something and then actually talk about kind of where you're at as a program. But I don't think anybody is really that hateable just from what they do on the field. We associate that in football with much more about who their coach is and how their fan base acts.
I think the way that I would say Ole Miss acts sometimes is a lot like that Hurricanes team did Miami with the Vinny Testaverde. When the whole wearing battle fatigues when they went to the Orange Bowl or Fiesta Bowl, forget which one. But that's sort of the way I look at it. And maybe it says to me it says a lot about the coach, because, and this goes in any sport, I think, you can get away with what the coach will let you get away with, and that's also kind of look what LSU is dealing with in some ways. That's why it seems that Ed Ogeron is in I don't know if trouble is trouble the right word, or hot water, or just the controversy surrounding it, because when it comes down to the way that a team acts, certainly on the field and sometimes off the field too, it's what the coach allows you to do.
It is, and coaches preach all the time about culture and this and that, and how you handle yourself on and off the field. And some of that just comes off it's just the most hollow message in the world, especially when you see what's gone on at a place like LSU, where it hasn't just been a Coach O thing, but he's been a part of this university that has just turned a blind eye to victims, and it has put winning above all costs. And to see the way that it's played out in Baton Rouge, and knowing how far back and how high up the food chain this goes, where you have 9 different athletes that Coach O had that were accused of sexually violent crimes, only 7 of which were disciplined in any way, and one of which, one of the 2 guys who was disciplined, Drake Davis, when you see what it took for Ed Ogeron to finally discipline him, you're just oh my goodness gracious, this is bizarre. But there is a certain accountability that has to come from the head coach with, and it's different if we're talking about what's being, accused at LSU as opposed to, Ole Miss baseball players being a little flashy. But I mean, it does kind of come back to the culture that a coach is willing to take on, and some are a bit more headstrong, and they're a bit more kind of I don't want to say set in their ways, but they'll kind of put their foot in the ground and put an end to something before it gets out of hand.
You use a really interesting word there, accountability, because right now The only people who have been held accountable for anything that's happened at LSU were at either Kansas or Oregon State. The former president at LSU who decided not to let go of Les Miles. He was the Oregon State president, and he was asked to tender his resignation, and then they accepted that resignation rather quickly. And we know what's happened at Kansas with Jeff Long and Les Miles now. And all that's happened at LSU is a couple of suspensions for high-up administrators. And I know there are a lot of people in Baton Rouge on campus there that are angry that nobody has really been held accountable at LSU athletics and the Title IX office.
It's strange. It's really strange because the point you bring up about F. King Alexander, who was fired or, at Oregon State, basically asked to step down in the wake of all that. It is so strange to see that LSU has still kind of embraced this. Well, you're not going to get us. And that's just how high up this goes. And you've seen like the associate AD, Verge Osbury, who was promoted after the university knew that he turned a blind eye to the Drake Davis situation, the former LSU receiver who was accused of domestic violence and was found guilty, kicked off the team eventually. But you've seen him get suspended for 30 days, and you haven't seen Coach O get disciplined. You haven't seen anything other than, these statements, these letters that they sent to the, I can't remember, it was like in this Senate hearing. And now they're getting the U.S. Department of Education involved, because when we're talking about abuse of power at a big public university, that's a really serious deal. And there are now so many people that are getting involved in this. There are $50 million lawsuits going on. I mean, it is a mess. It is an absolute mess. If you know nothing else about this situation other than LSU from the top down looks awful right now, I'd say that's the biggest takeaway. And it's hard to see them really being able to save face on this without having to go through some sort of major overhaul in those, official higher up positions at LSU.
Connor O'Gara from Saturday Down South joining us here on Halftime. I want to stick with this just for a second before we move on from this, but we were talking about this last week when you started seeing the news break with this and all the stories that were starting to come forward. But the ramifications, I want to obviously focus on LSU, but when you look outside of LSU amongst the SEC and other schools nationwide, this is going to have ramifications on everybody for how they conduct not only like their athletic business, but Title IX business and everything about it. And depending on how this all turns out with LSU, which you hope they get the hammer put on them and get done, make sure that their punishments are taken into consideration, obviously. But this is going to have ramifications for how all the other schools do handle business.
I wish I could say that, but after seeing cases like this play out at Baylor and Michigan State, I really don't have a whole lot of confidence in that. And that's a sad thing to say, because we have put winning above all else. And, I'm guilty of this in my business and what I do and writing about winning programs. And it's fun to talk about Coach O and kind of the cartoon character and Les Miles and he eats grass. And we build these coaches and these programs up based on what they're able to do when they win. And, as you guys know, in Arkansas, when they're not winning, we're going to get on air and we're going to, write, and we're going to talk about how bad they are and how they need to do what it takes to be able to figure that stuff out. But when it's being done at a cost, and that's what we're seeing at LSU, and that's what we saw at Michigan State, that's what we saw at Penn State and Baylor, then what are we really doing here? And the money has continued to grow in ways that I don't think anybody could have foreseen 20 years ago. And that's the issue that major college football has to continue to address, is what are we putting first? Are we putting our students in jeopardy? Are we putting their interests on the back burner and doing it for the sake of our program because of the money that it brings in? I mean, that's not going away. And I hate to say that, but it's not going to surprise me when the next case like this comes up. LSU, not to say it's a casualty, but unfortunately it's not the first, and it's probably not the last to be in a position like this where there's just been blatant abuse of power from so many different levels. And it's a really tough thing to have to sit there and watch as someone who loves college football.
The money situation that you're talking about there, Connor, is playing out at the Supreme Court. There's going to be a decision coming out, I guess, sometime this summer that really is going to decide the future of what college athletics looks like. And it's basically about like this giant pile of money you're talking about. how much of it goes to students, how much of it goes to whatever else, facilities or upkeep or administration overall. I've always said about college athletics, like people will say, oh, it's all about the money. No, the suits that get the profits are the ones at ESPN and, the bowl committees and that kind of stuff. These are mostly public athletic departments. Nobody is taking home profits, but there is a giant pile of money, and the equation of, how much of it goes to students, that right now is what is being debated, and that's really where the future of college sports lies.
It's interesting, too, because then you see a program like Vanderbilt, which has refused to partake in all of this spending, has finally decided that it is going to spend on athletics. And we saw the $300 million plan that was announced. I believe that was last week or the week before, but where they finally say, we're going to make this investment in big revenue sports. And they're asked, well, how are you able to do this? It's like, all right, well, we're just moving the money from one bank account to another. The money's been there. And that's the crazy thing, is that these decisions have been made, and they've been made for years. And to what extent is it being prioritized? It depends on which university you're looking at. But so many of these programs now, they continue to spend at such reckless rates because the money continues to grow. And you can say that you're not profiting and you're not doing this, you're not doing that. Well, that's because you're spending more of it. I mean, that's what it comes down. It's what it comes down to. So it's going to be fascinating to see the way that this all plays out, how name, image, likeness is going to impact that, if these student athletes are able to really make significant money off of, what any college student could be able to do. Obviously, they don't have the same sort of platform, but yeah, the money is just such a fascinating part of the conversation. If you think the money is the same now as what it was 10, 15 years ago, I mean, you just have your head in the sand.
Connor, before we let you go, want to get your thoughts on some Razorback football. This weekend is the Arkansas spring game. You're going to see probably some new faces on the offensive end, particularly quarterback. You got KJ Jefferson coming back, Malik Hornsby, and some other new pieces. In watching the spring game, it'll be on the SEC Network. What are you looking forward to seeing the most with this Razorback football team in the spring game?
Yeah, I want to see how KJ Jefferson runs Kendall Briles' offense, because I think it's kind of easy to forget that he wasn't a Sam Pittman era recruit, and he came to Arkansas to run Chad Morris's offense. And I mean, I realize that sounds like such a weird thing, because KJ Jefferson looks to have fully embraced the Sam Pittman era. But how does he look in this offense? And does it look like he's able to handle the tempo? We saw the flashes at the end of last year. He had moments where he looked great. He had moments where he didn't look so great. And are you going to be able to really build a better and improved team this year? Because I think Felipe Franks, the job that he did last year, was about as good, if not better, than what Arkansas fans could have hoped for. And so is he going to look crisp? Is he going to look like everything we've been hearing out of camp, that he's embraced this leadership type role? Or is it going to be Malik Hornsby, a guy who looks very different, playing the position, about 60 pounds of difference there? Is he going to look like the guy? I tend to think that Jefferson has a lot of potential running Kendall Briles' offense. I can't wait to see what it's capable of. But I think all eyes are going to be on the quarterback, and just kind of seeing how they're able to adapt to this, and are they able to handle tempo well? Because as we know at Arkansas, that's just such an important thing to be able to make this thing go.
Real quick, Connor, are you watching? I'm assuming there's 14 spring games. Are you watching them all in the SEC?
I mean, you can't really. You see the clips, and like I'll see the noteworthy things that come from all of them, but I'll probably watch a couple in full and then catch like a decent amount of the other stuff, and then I just pretty much consume, the takeaways, and I'll read up on all that stuff. But am I sitting here watching all 4 quarters of the Mississippi State spring game? Probably not. But I will make sure that I catch as much of it and make sure that I'm well versed on everything that's going on, and I'll see what I need to see.
All right. Well, I guess that's a little bit disappointing. I'm kidding. No, I wouldn't watch all of them either, man. I don't know who would. Appreciate you as always, Connor. Thanks so much.
Yeah, appreciate it, guys.
Thanks, Connor.
You got it. That's Connor O'Gara from Saturday Down South.